Hey all you heroes, hawks, heralds, crows, pirates, and wardens. Welcome to the Dragon Age Lorecast, where we unpack, discuss, and galaxy brain about all the lore behind the Dragon Age series.
We are so excited to bring you this podcast. Every episode, we'll be talking about a different topic in the Dragon Age universe. From character deep dives to exalted marches and elven gods, we will cover it all.
There will be spoilers. And always remember, swooping is bad.
Hello and welcome to the Dragon Age Lorecast, where we talk about all things Dragon Age. There's only one Dragon Age. There are not two Dragon Age. We talk about all things Dragon Age. I'm one of your hosts, Austin, also known as Teacup.
And I'm Shelby. I'm your other host.
And we are here today for a very, very special episode. We have our guest here with us, the one, the only Nug King, Lewis. Hey, Lewis, how you doing?
Really good. It's good to be here.
Yeah, and so this is one of the benefits that Lewis gets is he gets his own episode to come and talk about. And we are here to talk about Dragon Age Absolution, right, Shelby?
Yeah, specifically, we're gonna like overview it, give some trivia, all the good stuff, but we are gonna spend a lot of our time talking about the endings and the implications of the ending and kind of our general thoughts and takeaways and what all of that means, because there's a lot to unpack. And if you've seen it, you know that.
So here's your spoiler warning.
Yeah, don't get mad at us. If you haven't seen the show, don't listen to this episode if you're not okay with spoilers. Just skip it. It's okay. Like, go listen to an old episode. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
And if you do listen to it and you haven't seen it, sure, but go watch the show because it's really good.
Yes, definitely watch the show. So, are we ready to get started?
I'm ready.
I am ready.
Awesome. Well, I brought some trivia, and now I know there's like not really a lot of trivia about this, I don't think, but there are a couple things that I brought. First, I wanted to talk about the word absolution and what absolution actually means. So, absolution, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, is a formal release from blame for doing something wrong. Usually it's used in a religious setting, like a pastor or a priest absolving you from sin. Do we actually see this occurring in Dragon Age Absolution? What do you think?
Well, in my typical fashion, I'm going to answer your question with a question. My question is, it depends on who you consider is seeking absolution.
I would say anyone. What are your thoughts generally?
I would say that it's named Absolution for me because it is Rezarin seeking absolution for the wrongs that he's done. And no, it does not come to fruition.
I guess my question is like, does Rezarin actually do that though? In the show, in his actions in the show, is he actually seeking absolution?
No, I don't think he is. Well, I think he thinks he is, but he's definitely, like, from an outsider perspective, no way. He's a bit.
Perfect way to phrase it. Yeah, he's a little bit off his rocker, I think. And yeah. We'll go into more of this later. But I just thought it was so interesting. Like, it's named Absolution, but there's really not a lot of absolution that's actually happening in the show.
Maybe there's, I guess, maybe not absolution, but Miriam sort of gets that. I think she gets closure more so than absolution at the end of the show.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. So my next trivia fact is that Absolution takes place in the city of Nessum. Nessum is located in the southwestern part of Tevinter. So this is close to the Anderfells. Now, Nessum, interestingly, has a giant sculpture of Andraste built into the side of a cliff. this is not the only city in Thetis with a giant statue of Andraste. In the Anderfels, near Weishaupt, the Grey Warden Fortress, there is another statue of Andraste. This one is carved into the side of a mountain. So this statue is named Our Lady of the Anderfels. And we don't know if the Nessum statue is named or not. And we don't know if they're connected, but I think it's really interesting that in this southwestern-ish portion of northern Thetis, we both have two instances of this happening, and we don't see that anywhere else. And then my last fun fact is that there is a Codex entry in Dragon Age 2 named Absolution. Given the ending, I think it's very interesting that there is a Codex entry in Dragon Age 2 named Absolution. I don't know. I think it's interesting. But the Codex is for a longbow, and the entry itself is about the Anderfell. So I'm going to read this, and then y'all can give me your thoughts. Antiva doesn't have a monopoly on assassins. The bleak Anderfells have produced some of the most ruthless killers in the world, and in the capital of Hosberg, there are never fewer than 10 in the service of their king. They served only the king, and the politics of the Anderfells are a brutal affair. Among the pious, the most dangerous thing a man can do is to disgrace himself, for the king sends his killers not for those who plot to overthrow him, but for those who break the Maker's laws and fall into sin and decadence. In the Anders, this is called absolution, not assassination. Death is the sinner's act of penance. And it comes from In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genetivi. I don't like it.
In that context of absolution, maybe Rosarin does get absolution.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I feel like when we did our episode on the Anderfells, we may have mentioned this, but I didn't remember that when I was doing research for this episode. And so it just kind of like threw me for a loop for a minute, because I was like, this is not like how most of Thetis treats like religion, murdering, assassinating people when they sin. Like that is very extreme even for Thetis. So I was like, oh, wow, yikes.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal, that one.
I don't know what the governments of Thetis really are. Like, are they monarchies and whatnot, or are they theocracies? Because it seems the Chantry actually dictates a lot of the lawmaking.
Yeah, no, I think it is a weird mix between the two. I don't think it's an easy one or the other situation, for sure.
I think there's also some weird, shady shadow society thing happening underneath as well.
For sure. Well, let's move into the plot summary. I kind of broke it down by episode here, and you can see in the notes it gets longer as we go on, but I feel like there's more stuff that happens later on. So anyway, we'll just go through it episode by episode, and if y'all have any thoughts or comments, just stop me. So the first episode is titled A Woman Unseen. And this is when we're introduced to Miriam and her friend Roland. We meet them first. We do eventually meet the other cast of characters that will make up the rest of the season. And the other characters are Fairbanks, Hera, Lachlan, and Quidian. Fairbanks, we already knew from Dragon Age Inquisition. He's a very minor side character that we can meet in the Emerald Graves. We meet Hera, a human from Tevinter, Lachlan, a dwarf, and Quidian, the classic memeable Qunari mage. And so they all end up banding together, and we learn that they were sent by the Inquisition to acquire an artifact called the Circulum Infinitus, which is at the Summer Palace in Tevinter. I found it interesting. I don't know about y'all, but once again, this is a classic case of, okay, Tevinter Chantry took what the Orlesian Chantry did, and we just made it the opposite. with the Summer Palace versus the Winter Palace.
Can we talk about just briefly that the Circulum Infinitus is just a redundant name?
That's fair. Circle.
Yeah, like a circle is already infinite.
We didn't
just made
ask
it
it to
double.
make sense.
Yeah.
We just asked it to look nice.
It's like an exclamation point on the end of the word, like
Circle. That's fair.
Episode 1 was like sort of like the setup, I think, and I liked episode 1 with how it sort of laid everything out.
I did too.
I think episode 1 is the only one we watched twice because we watched it in the live stream and then we watched it on our own. And I think it did introduce the plots. It set Twitter ablaze because everyone thought they canonized an ending, but they really didn't.
No, they didn't. They really didn't. Yeah, yes. Because everyone thought that meant that they canonized, well, I guess multiple things. They canonized, well, people thought that they canonized Vivian as divine on that first kind of preview because they just see Cassandra and Liliana. But in reality, when we saw the full episode, okay, it's back in time. It's during the time of the Inquisition. So no one's divine yet. Is that what you're referring to, or are you talking about something different?
I'm talking about the Inquisition disbanding. Well, they thought, because they said the Inquisition disbanded, thinking that means that the Inquisition is no more, canonizing that choice. But no matter what choice you make at the end of Trespasser, the Inquisition is disbanded.
In some way.
Yeah.
But episode 2 is called The Will of the Maker. So we are introduced to Rosarin in this, who is a Tevinter Magister. He is trying to uncover the history of said artifact, said circle. The gang distracts the guards so that they can then get into the Summer Palace. We also learn that Rosarin is sent on his quest by the Divine of Tevinter, and Rosarin basically begged to be the one to be able to research it, which red flag, homie. We also learn more about the Circulum Infinitus, that it's said to bring the dead back to life, was created in the Summer Palace too, and then Rosarin, of course, summons a spirit. And this is something I think we should talk about because this was really interesting. But the spirit summoned is called a spirit of wisdom, but it refers to itself as a spirit of memory. And it says it's observed all things in this location forever in the service of Tevinter. And the spirit has 8 eyes, similar to the Dread Wolf. I was uncomfy by this, by all of it. And just all the things that were happening in that conversation, I was like, so many lore implications. I need to know more.
Well, it very much reminded me of the librarian in
the Vir Darthara.
Darthara, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll go back to your question. Is memory an emotion?
I know. Is it? I don't know. Did you have thoughts about the spirit?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the wisdom and memory emotion thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Where that sits in my brain.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the last things the spirit says was the thing I think that threw me for the biggest loop, because it says that it was created by the spirit says the Circulum was created by Magister Amelia Pavis, but has never been used. So if you are a fan of Dragon Age Inquisition, that name should be familiar to you because it's the same last name as one of our companions, Dorian Pavis himself. And we know from his backstory, you can go and listen to our episode on Dorian, but we do know from his story that his family has been in Tevinter for a long time and that they've been really powerful in Tevinter for a long time. So that's really, really important, really big development, I think.
This just proves to me that BioWare and the Absolution team and the writer teams know exactly what they're doing, because they knew that if they threw in that name, that all of us lore people would be like, hey, we know that. What's happening?
Oh yeah, they 100% know who their audience is. Without a doubt, they totally know us.
100%. And I think it's like a nod to I don't know, maybe like a little nod to the fans saying that, hey, we are here, we are helping produce this show and we support it. Like, it's not just like Netflix are running off with it.
Mhm.
I love that. I so agree with that too. Very much agree. So the last thing I have to talk about with episode 2, well, I guess 2 more things. Quidian has a great quote about Razara, and she says, I mean, he's cute, but yikes. And I saw that and just shouted, same girl. Yikes is right.
I like how they didn't let Matt Mercer voice the character that looks like him.
I know.
I read this when you sent me these notes and I lost it. I was laughing so hard because I was like, yep, I feel it.
Yes.
100%.
100%. I feel very much that Quidian is like the audience's internal monologue character. And then just the last thing that happens in this episode is that Fairbanks dies. And I remember I was like, oh my God, what is happening? Like, isn't he going to be a main character? Did they just bring him back to kill him?
I thought that it wasn't actually Fairbanks. I thought it was like an imposter, maybe another envy demon or something like that.
I thought he wasn't really
had
dead.
That thought. Oh, that too. Oh my goodness. Maybe he's not. Do we see him after that?
Do we see him again?
No.
I don't think we actually see him like die.
I mean, Dragon Age isn't known for like having characters actually die on screen and then bringing them back, other than Corypheus, and now the ending of this. So
yeah, I don't know.
They don't play fast and loose with the permanency of death.
You say that, but then also you can kill Liliana. You can sell Fenris back into slavery, and he reappears in the comics. You know,
this is there's a lore explanation for Fenris reappearing in the comics.
Okay.
And second, with Liliana, I think that is a point of they didn't know if they were going to make a second game. They didn't know that they were going to get to make Inquisition, and they realized, crap, we have this really important character that we need to be alive for this plan. So we're just going to have to write our way out of that.
No, that's fair. I'm just giving you a hard time. So moving on to episode 3. I remember when we started this one, we saw that this one was named The Serpent's Coil. And that was the first one that I was like, I don't like the name of this episode. And then the rest of them, I was like, I don't like the name of this episode. I don't like the name of any of the episodes anymore. It's making me nervous. So this was the first one that pattern started for me.
Yeah, they sort of get increasingly depressing
and frightening. And when I was doing research for this episode, I was like, okay, so all of the quest names, all the main quest names in Inquisition are parts of the Chant of Light. And so I was like, there's got to be this has got to be part of that too. And it's not, surprisingly. I was like combing the Chant of Light like a freaking nerd. And I was like, no, it's got to be here. It's got to be here. It was not here. It didn't pan out for me.
The Serpent's Coil sounds like some unique staff you would find like in the mid game of Inquisition.
True.
Or like a piece of jewelry or something.
Mm-hmm.
A necklace for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that'll happen in Dreadwolf. Let's move into episode 3. Basically, Miriam and the gang are fighting back. They're attempting to get past a huge horde of demons and undead, and it doesn't look good, of course. We also learn a little bit more about Razarin and his girlfriend of some sort. Confusing, not clear. Her name is Tasia. She is the Knight Commander. That was her title. So I'm making an assumption that it's the same rank system as in the rest of Thedas for the Templars. Is she Knight Commander of all of Tevinter, or just this city, just the Summer Palace? We don't know. It's unclear.
I thought it was clear. I assumed that it was just of either Nessum or the Summer Palace.
Key word in that sentence, you assumed.
Right. Well, because Meredith isn't even like Knight Commander of Kirkwall. She's Knight Commander of the Kirkwall Circle.
right? But she uses her power in all of Kirkwall.
That's true.
So I don't know. It's unclear to me. I think it's unclear.
Also, I think in this episode, very much we see how useless the Tevinter Templars are compared to the Orlesian and Southern Thedas Templars.
100%.
Yeah, for sure. But I did have a good quote from Tasia. Tasia is not my favorite. I thought she was annoying. I know that that's a hot take. We have some people in the Discord, namely the Wesbotron, who's going to get mad at me for that, but I don't care. I didn't particularly care for her. But there was a good quote. It says, "I'm not putting an artifact over people's lives." And I put in the notes, wow, a Templar with morals. Shocking.
Okay, that's not really fair because we see a lot of Templars with morals.
A lot is an overstatement.
Most of the
I
ones
agree.
we interact with have morals.
Most?
Yeah.
A couple, maybe.
No, okay.
5 max.
So you've got the whole group of Templar recruits that are looking for Willem in the beginning of Act 1.
Okay.
You've got Gregor.
Okay.
You've got Cullen.
I mean, debatable at which point in time we're talking
right.
about.
He eventually has morals. You've got Cassandra.
She's not a Templar, she's a Seeker.
Okay,
It's different.
whatever.
Different!
Okay, I'm still counting Cassandra.
No, you can't count
You've
her.
got Thrask.
Yeah, Thrask I'll give you, for
The
sure.
Templar that's hunting Quintus.
Yeah, but he's like retired.
No, he's still an active
Okay,
Templar.
okay. There are a few. I just really don't agree with
Sir Barris.
Again, great example. We haven't even broke like 5 yet. So I disagree with a lot.
I've got 7.
And I disagree with like 3 of them. So that's 4. We're going to have to just agree to disagree here because I cannot with you right now.
I need Wes here.
No, we don't need Wes here.
Chaos.
Anyway. So, the Summer Palace was designed with its defenses specifically designed to protect from a slave revolt. Interesting. Very Tevinter. I mean, I think it really shows you like where Tevinter's priorities are, right? Like to protect their property and their status as the Imperium.
I was going to say that it also confirms that the Summer Palace was definitely built by Tevinter. It wasn't built on or it could still be built on the location of like an elven city or something, but it sounds to me like it's built by Tevinter, unlike the Winter Palace, which was like, hey, this is ours now.
Yes, very much.
Also, let's talk about like the positioning of the Summer Palace. So Nezum is right on the border with the Anderfells. So Tevinter builds this imposing Summer Palace right on the border with another country to say like, hey, we're here. Not only that, but the country that houses the Grey Wardens, who are the ones responsible for killing their gods.
These are all facts. All facts. To shift a little bit, I think we start seeing in episode 3 that Quidian is the moral compass of the group, which is great. I love that development from a Kunari because so much in Dragon Age Kunari are like, oh, they're wild, they're savage, they're demonic, they're bad. So I love that development for her because she's the one that heard the screaming and went back and helped save the slaves and the elves. She's the one that went back and I just love that development.
I agree.
I like the inclusion of her because it shows that there are more Kunari in the Inquisition than just Bull and an occasional Inquisitor, if you choose that.
I agree. I definitely liked that Quidian was not the stereotypical gruff, sort of silent Quinari.
Mm-hmm. And then the last thing with this episode is that we end with the group being separated. So we have Fairbanks is dead. We've got Hera and the dragon and the freed slaves. And then we have the rest of them, the Infinitus gang with Miriam, Roland, all of them. So that's kind of where we end it. And then the next episode, again, I was uncomfortable with the name of this episode, Those Who Falsely Dream. I really almost thought this was going to have more of a soulless connection. We didn't get that, but I really thought that we would with the name of it.
Well, yeah. I think it would be dangerous. It would be interesting implications to name an episode Those Who Falsely Dream and connect that to Solus. Because Solus claims that when he dreams and he walks the fade, that he sees things as they actually are.
Right. Like it's not false. That's fair. But we do learn a lot in this episode. We learn that Razarin's mother was the owner of Miriam, and we're introduced to Miriam's brother Neb. Neb was also owned by Razarin's mother. And Razarin also thinks of Miriam and Neb as his siblings. That was not their experience, but that's what Razarin thinks, which I think we really start to see that he has been putting on a really good front thus far. And he is losing it, I think, in this episode. And that's when we see like mask off, Razarin full self.
100%. We see the cracks start to form for sure.
Yeah. And there's a lot of them, which we'll get into in a little bit. We also learned that Hera, not Miriam, not anyone else, Hera is the betrayer, which is interesting. I think in episode 5, we learn more about her backstory, so we'll get into that in a minute. But we also have some really interesting conversations and quotes between Razarin and Tassia. Tassia says, if I find any evidence of blood magic at all, I will report you to the divine. And Razarin says, I won't disappoint you. And Tassia says, you already have. I wrote in the notes, ouchie, bro. Like, that hurts. That hurts. It's not even me that is getting the diss.
Like Tassia there reminds me a little bit of Dorian towards the end of Inquisition, or Dorian, I guess, being that driving force for good in Tevinter. Tassia sort of reminds me a little bit of that. Obviously not to the same degree. She's still obviously actively supporting and furthering the goals of what the divine is trying to achieve here that we don't actually know. But yeah, that it definitely reminded me of that.
I agree with that for sure.
I think that in this moment with Razarin, Tassia is starting to see like the cracks in her understanding of Tevinter and like the cracks in understanding that there is no like good really in a mage with unlimited power and an ability to do whatever they want. And so I do think that she's starting to like come to the form of that, of like realizing that these magisters are not good for Tevinter. And I think had not things played out as they do at the end of this show, Tassia might have ended up betraying Razarin.
Well, I think that might still be a possibility. Well, not Razarin, but like betraying his side of things, the Imperium, if there's a season 2. But we also learn at the second half of this episode that Miriam is actually the one that killed Razarin's mother. We also learn that her last name is Amasine, because his mother sacrificed Miriam's brother Neb to a demon during his harrowing. Yikes. It's horribly, horribly traumatic for everyone in the room. And we clearly see that because Miriam then is literally running from her past in every way that she can. Razarin is using the past to fuel his ascent through Tevinter society. Like he sees himself as eventually becoming the divine, like seeing him on that throne during her dream. So there's just so much that is wrong with this that it was just really, I found it disturbing. Frankly, just on Razarin's aspect. He really leaned into the like, you're my family in this episode. And I was like, that's not accurate.
Razarin doesn't view them really as slaves until they stop doing what he wants. And then he does.
I disagree with that. I think he always viewed them as slaves. He just convinced himself that they were his siblings because the minute they stop doing what he wants, he's like, oh, you're a slave now. You've always been a slave. This is who you are. And it's like, well, if you had really seen them as humans or as people, as elves equal to you, you never would have been able to make that switch so quickly.
Right. And I think that Razarin very much views his childhood as like a good thing. He can't stand someone pointing out that it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And a reminder of both if he doesn't keep Miriam and Neb close, it's a reminder that he's a weak ass mage. He failed his
What?
harrowing.
Yeah,
Like-
correct. Keeping Neb alive or with him is just like a constant reminder to him of his failure, basically. And I think his entire goal with the circulum and to bring Neb back is to him to sort of fix his failure, because he's sort of walking around pretending to have this sense of bravado and like, I'm a really powerful mage and I can do whatever I want sort of thing. I will be the next divine, when really he failed his harrowing. So he shouldn't be here, really.
Right. And also, like, if this harrowing had happened in a circle in a school, he never would have even done anything. This happened at home. They were allowed to do the harrowing at home so they could cover all this up in the process. So to me, it's like, okay, is this something that happens to all Tevinter mages, or are they special because his mom had more power than other mages? Again, this is something that's left unclear, but I would be really curious to know the answer to that question.
But I also think it's interesting when we see the harrowing. Does a harrowing have to be presided over by a Tevinter Magister? Because that she's the only like official that's there. There are no Templars. There are no other mages there. Whereas we see the harrowing in Origins, like Cullen is there to be the Templar to kill the hero of Ferelden if they fail.
Right. Yeah, it's a very different harrowing. I was frankly surprised that the process even existed in Tevinter.
I was just about to say that. Yeah. I didn't expect Tevinter to have a harrowing at all.
Right, because why would they need one, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess if they're still trying to like make sure you're uber powerful and that you can like have as much power as you could ever dream of, I guess it makes sense in that.
Or it's something imposed on them by the Orlesian Chantry as a result of one of the Exalted Marshes.
Well, I doubt it, because the Orlesian Chantry and the Tevinter Chantry aren't even related at all anymore.
I guess that's true.
Which we'll talk about in like 4 or 5 episodes. So stay tuned.
But it could just be something left over from, the first time they'd be like, okay, we won, we'll leave you alone, but you have to have Templars and you have to have harrowings.
Yeah,
it could also be just like a way of weeding out the weak, maybe
Mm.
as well, potentially, because we know that weakness is not something that Tevinter want. So
yeah, no, that I like that idea. I think that honestly makes a lot of sense. So at the end of this episode, they are, as a group, heading to save Hera. And that's kind of how this episode ends. And then we move into episode 5, which this one is named An Altar of Fire. Again, I know I sound like a broken record, but I was uncomfortable. But this is the episode where like 2 things really happen. Like we see all the stuff happening with Razarin. We kind of get his whole like motivation, and then we get backstory from Hera. Those are like the 2 biggest things I think that happen. So Razarin is literally deranged by his grief, I think. I don't know why he thinks that this will ever work out, any of this, like not just the dead body being kept alive by a spirit, but that Neb and Miriam even want to have any kind of relationship with him at all. And even then, like, what would a relationship with him look like? Does that mean they have to be slaves? Does that mean they get to be free? And like, what does it mean if you're free and then you're still seeing like other people you were enslaved with every day? Like, that is deranged behavior.
There's just no thought behind it at all, I don't think, from his part. I think he is just loopy enough to believe that they are their siblings, as he calls them, and that he just thinks all he's thinking about is fixing his failure and restoring that I don't even know what to call it, restoring his like belief that he did right and that he is deserving of what and who he is.
Yeah, absolutely. But then right after that, Miriam says Neb is the only one who ever cared about her. So we're seeing confirmation of like she never saw Rosarin in that way. She was punished for things he did. So I thought that was interesting.
She was punished for playing with him,
right?
As a child,
right? Yeah, and then there was just a really funny quote from Roland. He says, "There's a reason that the Teventer flag has a snake on it," which I agree, very much agree.
Woven into their history.
Yes, literally every part of it. And then the last big thing in this episode is that we learn more about Hira's backstory. We learn that she's from Teventer, specifically Northern Teventer, but her family's dead. And of course, I brought a quote. She says, "My family was the cream of Teventer once, wealthy, influential, until we tried to help the people. That people like you enslave, and the Venatori found us. Don't you get it? I hate Teventer. This place hurt everyone I love, and I'm going to make all of you pay for it. The good, the bad, you all deserve to burn." What are our thoughts on that?
Again, this has kind of been my theme of the like new season or whatever, has been the question of, does Teventer deserve to be redeemed? And here we have another person that we chalk up with Fenris, who says, no, there is nothing to redeem about Teventer. Now, I think there's a big jump from wanting to tear down a system and wanting to kill all the individuals who are a part of that system.
Yeah, very much.
Going on that line of thought, I don't think Teventer can be redeemed in its current status. I think it really needs to just sort of be overthrown completely and start again, sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I also thought it was interesting. Like, I think a lot of times in Dragon Age circles, we think of Fenris and we think of Anders as two opposite extremes. Like, obviously, Anders is the pro-mage extreme, and then Fenris is the anti-mage extreme, which I don't think either of those things are true, first and foremost, but that's how it's kind of like conceptualized. And I think Hira is replacing almost Fenris in this anti-Teventer, anti-mage thing, because like Fenris never says anything as extreme as this. He never says that the good and the bad, everyone deserves to burn. Like that takes everything. That takes war crimes to a new level. Like, is there something worse than war crimes? I don't know what it is, but that in itself was like shocking to me.
And there's a big difference. Fenris is never going to hurt the innocent to accomplish his goals. Hira would.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we see her sort of do it. In this, we do. We see her kill Fairbanks, really. And Fairbanks was on the side of good.
Right.
Yeah, and I also think it's a place where, like, this is the difference when a person who comes from oppression tries to fight back against the system versus when a person from privilege fights back against the system. Fenris understands that the people at the bottom are never to blame for the horrible things that are happening, and we should save them at all possible costs. Whereas Hira is like, this is all messed up. Everyone deserves to die. And of course that's her take, because she probably doesn't see the people at the bottom if she comes from this wealthy Teventer family. So I think that is a really interesting way that they've kind of written the character. So we can move into the last episode, which is titled The Price of Salvation. Again, yikes. But there are so many things that happened in this. The dragon fight, obviously, Rosarin tries to bring back Neb yet again. Like, when is he going to learn this is not going to work? He's emotionally unwell, like just not okay. And then he has this quote that says, "So many lives to bring one beast to heal. I didn't know if he's referring to Dragon, if he's referring to Miriam, if he's referring to Neb. Is he referring to all of them? Like,
I think it's intentionally left really vague like that because I also, that quote was, I loved that quote. Like, yeah, it really hit.
Yeah. I think it really kind of sums up where Rosarin is at. Like, he doesn't see any of them as people that are equal to him.
No, I think this is where we finally see the cracks, just like it breaks, the shell breaks, and he's just finally given up on his facade.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so, you know, we're not kind of going over everything that happens in the episode, but the last thing we see is that Hira's contacting Kirkwall is not Varric like we once thought it was in episode 2. In fact, her contacting Kirkwall is Meredith,
the Red Knight,
somehow, who's now known as the Crimson Knight, who is now encased in red lyrium in some way. We don't really know how it works, but that's the ending.
What a cliffhanger.
Yes.
Yeah. Before we unpack Meredith, because I'm sure after our mid-break we'll really unpack Meredith and her implications and everything. But I think what I want to talk about is going back to this first question of like, does absolution happen? And like, who is seeking absolution? And this last episode's name is, the price of salvation. It's really the price for Miriam's salvation from her past, from being enslaved, and because yes, Rosarin dies and they strike a blow in the name of slavery, in the name of like freedom against slavery and to Venter. They do all, but the price is that she realizes that she's lost this woman that she loves. She has to say goodbye to her brother, which is both a like bittersweet kind of moment that we have in that episode. But is it like, could you say that kind of redefine the use of absolution here and kind of use it to mean to like bring to a complete end? And so that, there is an absolute end to Miriam's slavery at the end of this season.
I agree. I also think she she is able to absolve herself of, I guess, the guilt and blame she took on herself from Neb's death.
Mm-hmm.
I think she finally is able to close that door.
Yeah, for sure. I really like that interpretation of the word, for sure. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think now's a good time to go to our mid-break.
Yeah, let's do it.
Hawk stepped in the poopy.
I love you.
Want a sandwich?
All this for me? And I didn't get Alexius anything. Send him a fruit basket. Everyone loves those.
All right, well, welcome to the middle of the show where we do all kinds of stuff that just doesn't have to do with the lore of Dragon Age. And so this is where we thank our patrons, specifically Genesis, and then our Divine Tier patron Kit, and a special thank you to our Nug King tier, Lewis H. If you want to join our Patreon, you can sign up for all these kinds of tiers for all kinds of different benefits. You can find that at patreon.com/Dragon Age Lorecast or the Dragon Age Lorecast.
It's just Dragon Age.
Just Dragon Age Lorecast. And another great way to support us is to review us on Apple or Spotify. If you leave us a 5-star review with some kind words, we will read them out on a future episode of the show. You can also come and join us on Discord, the Cups Podcasting and More Discord server, where you can hang out with us and talk about Dragon Age, talk about our other shows, the Assassin's Creed Lorecast, the Inheritance Page by Page podcast. All great things. I think that's all I got.
Awesome.
Up there, giant icicle tits. Tittles.
You're looking for titsicles.
Oh, that's good.
Yes, and it's a real nice night for an evening.
You fear barbarians will swoop down upon you.
Yes, swooping is bad.
Before we get into like our general thoughts and like takeaways from the entire season, I thought it would be good to talk about these endings specifically. Like, what did we think of it? What are our thoughts on it after we've been able to sit with it for, I guess, almost 2 months now? Have your thoughts changed? You know, anything you have specifically about the ending with Meredith?
Shelby can attest to this, but I was furious, like, but in a good way. Like, I was angry in a good way. But when I heard the voice actress come out and like speak in Meredith's voice, and I heard all that, I was like, no, not again, not again. I think I actually said, pardon my French for all our people who want a clean episode, but I said, I killed this bitch once already. Do not make me do it again.
You did say that. That was like a direct quote for sure. For sure. Lewis, what did you think?
I really liked the ending. Meredith, I really love the voice actor for Meredith. I really liked her in Skyrim as well.
She's
Merida in Skyrim.
Yeah, Merida in Skyrim. I forgot. A new hand touches the beacon.
No. The ending, like, I got chills. Like, I heard the voice and I was like, oh my god, she's back. I loved it. I can't.
I didn't like it. I thought it was kind of lazy, and maybe that's because we haven't seen like what the payoff is going to be yet. So I may change my mind, but I just don't love. There are two things I don't love. I don't love repeating villains that are like a surprise when they come back. And this is the second one we've got. First Crivius and now Meredith. And then obviously Solus will come back as well, and Dreadwolf, but that's not a surprise. So I'm not counting that. But the second thing that bothers me is like, I think it's kind of mean to Hawk. Like, they can't do anything right. All the villains they've killed come back. Is Orsino going to come back next? What about the Aeroshock? I mean, probably, since Sten is the new Aeroshock. I don't know. It makes me feel really bad for Hawk.
There's a TikTok that is the sound from Brooklyn Nine-Nine where Andy Samberg's Jake Peralta is saying, like, that's why you're not a good detective, because you don't have any arch enemies, Terry. And Terry's like, I don't have any arch nemesis is because I solve all my cases. And it's between Hawk and the hero of Ferelden.
Yeah, that's accurate. That's
brilliant.
But, you know, I think it is kind of mean to Hawk. And I think for me, like, Solus is different because we don't get a finale to Solus. We don't defeat Solus. We don't even ever fight Solus in Inquisition and Trespasser ever. Mm-hmm. He's kind of a hidden villain throughout the whole thing. Whereas, like, we fight Meredith. We end Meredith. We fight Corypheus. We end Meredith. Like, you know, Varric says, like, he wasn't just, like, thought dead. He was full of stab wounds and arrows. Like, he was dead.
Yeah. Yeah, which
but did Meredith die?
Right, exactly. That's my question. Like, yes, we think Meredith died because we fought her, but is there some Red Lyrium thing that kind of like finagled life back into her? We know that her creepy body was there in the gallows for a while. So I guess we don't really know if the effects of Red Lyrium could revive her.
Right. That's true.
I was going to point out that you can actually sort of see the Meredith statue in Inquisition in the Black Emporium. Mm-hmm. It's like hidden at the back there beneath like some nets and things.
Another thing that I was going to say, if listeners, if you've listened to I think it's our Red Lyrium episode that we talked about this, you will know that when the Red Lyrium idol is found by Hawk in the Deep Roads with Varric, it's not just an idol. There's also an idol and a staff that's with it. So I guess when I first watched it, something I was reflecting on is, does Meredith have possession of this red lyrium staff? Did she come into its power somehow? Did it give her extra powers to kind of stay alive? Was it somehow built into her sword? Like, I don't know. I wonder if that will play a part in this story.
So I'm going to put on my Assassin's Creed hat for a moment.
Okay.
So for those of you who listen to Assassin's Creed and you've been watching us like talk about Pieces of Eden have the ability not only to influence the mind, but to house consciousness themselves. And so maybe red lyrium is kind of playing a similar thing, that it can also corrupt you, but it can also be a place where you like take refuge. Like, you know how Corypheus survives through the blight. Like, he moves just from one blighted creature to the next, similar to how an archdemon acts.
Points were
I think
made.
there's some weight to it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, do we have any other thoughts about the ending?
I hope I get to kill Meredith again.
Okay. All right. Respect.
I don't want to, but I want to be able to do it.
Respect. Well, let's get into just kind of our general thoughts and takeaways from Absolution. Austin wants to go last. Lewis, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. I didn't have too many. I just had some general thoughts about Tevinter artifacts, and how many there are still out there, who has them, what they might do. We've obviously seen a few in game, so and in the other media, so we've seen the Jaws of Hakon, we saw the pillars.
Mm-hmm.
And are they actually Tevinter, or are they just the ruins of like Arlathan and Elven and all that? And are they just appropriating the culture again? So that was a big one. Like, do they belong to Tevinter, and did the Circulum actually get created by a Tevinter mage? I know that the spirit did say that it was created, but don't know.
The Circulum, it sounds exactly like an artifact the Evanurus would create.
Dragons. I had some thoughts on dragons. They get a real bad rap in everything. They're hunted, they're killed, chained up to be a weird statue monster thing that is hung from the ceiling. I feel bad for them.
Yes, I agree.
I'll save that for mine, but I just have a funny Kunari thing about dragons.
And then my last thought was about Rosarin and just, what the hell, bro? Like, let it go. Be like Elsa, let it go.
Yes.
I can go next, so you can, since you have a lot more lore things to bring in.
Okay.
So definitely, like, yes, I am curious about the Tevinter artifacts and like what else exists out there that Tevinter magisters are using to amplify their power. And like Shelby's going to talk about in a little bit, something else that might be connected or related. For dragons, I love that we are continuing to get canon confirmation that Kunari are dragon simps. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah, true.
But I am glad that we're kind of getting a broader perspective of dragons beyond just like just this beast that you encounter or hunt. And like when Quidian is like, oh, these are intelligent and they want these things and like they have emotions. Me over here is just being like, well, now my Inquisitor is the worst person in the entirety of Thedas.
Because they're a Reaver?
Well, not
or because
even
they kill them all.
Because I killed 12 high dragons.
Yeah, that's fair.
The last thing I just wanted to take away is that this show actually gave me a lot of hope for Dragon Age Dreadwolf and how they would handle Tevinter, because elven slavery and just slavery in general was front and foremost in this show. And I think that if they try to skirt through it in Dragon Age Dreadwolf, which has been a fear of mine, that it's going to be bad, that there is no hope of redeeming Tevinter in the fandom's eyes in my book unless you properly address and present the reality of slavery.
Very much agree. Very, very much agree with you. And that was a fear I had as well, that this show kind of like evened out. Like, okay, slavery and the effects of it are a central theme in the show. and affect like the main plot of the show. So I totally agree. But so I really only had a couple takeaways. First and foremost, I loved Roland and Lackland's romance. Was obsessed with it from the get-go. I was shipping them. It was kind of funny. I saw this on Twitter. People after the end, people were like, people who shipped Roland and Lackland winning, people who shipped Miriam and Hera not winning. And it was like, well, yeah, that's accurate. So I loved that inclusion. And then another thing I loved is that we got a lot of new swears. We got nug shit and we got maker's titties. Both 10 out of 10. May have to incorporate those into my regular everyday vernacular. The big lore thing that I have to talk about that I've been literally thinking about since the show dropped, and I have to like scoot forward to the desk. That's how you know I'm getting intense about it. But I'm curious, is the Circulum Infinitus related to the McGrawlin from Dragon Age comic Until We Sleep, and then it's kind of foreshadowed in the Silent Grove? So I just have a quote from the wiki that talks about the McGrawlin. It says, the McGrawlin is a Tevinter device empowered by blood magic and dating back to an ancient time when the Dreamers commanded the Fade. The McGrawlin's powerful magic is the legacy of the Tevinter Imperium. I think that sounds like the Circulum Infinitus. Obviously, the big difference, if you've read this comic, is that the McGrawlin is huge, like bigger than a person, and then the Circulum Infinitus is small. It's the size of a ring or a bracelet or something. So those are the two biggest differences, but they're virtually identical. If you have pictures of it, you can see they're both gold. They are both blood is involved. And they're both actually snakes, Ouroboros, like where the snake is eating itself. So I feel like there's no way they're not related.
Just looking at the image that you put there, the similarity in the two images is crazy. Just even the way that the blood is like snaking into or around the devices.
Yeah, absolutely. And like another thing I was thinking about with this, so in the comic, this is spoilers for the comic, but I think we've talked about it before. So the Magister Aurelian Titus wanted the device to restore the Imperium. That was his goal. And he wanted to use King Merrick, Theron's blood, to power it because his blood is special, because his blood is descended from a great dragon. And then there's all this stuff about dragons in this in Absolution. It's not necessarily tied to the Circulum Infinitus, but it's dragons are a big theme in the show, enough that it's like, well, how is this tied in at all? I don't know, but it feels connected or related in some way to me. All right. Well, before we get into our side character, I just thought we could give like a summation. If you liked Absolution, did you have a favorite character? And then like, what would your rating out of 10 be for it?
I was I really liked the show. I really enjoyed it. I don't have a lot of time to watch TV shows or things at the moment, and I made time for that because I really, really enjoyed it. I'd give it a 7, 8, 9 out of 10, somewhere in that vicinity. The animation style is not my favorite, but I think it worked. And my favorite character, Quidian, for sure. I liked that the comic relief character in there, and I liked the Quinari, not stereotype that they gave her.
Yeah, I agree. Quidian was probably also my favorite. I just loved her so much. She's just not a stereotype at all. I love that. I also enjoyed Absolution, even if I feel conflicted about the ending. I think I would have 2 ratings. I think for people who are not fans of Dragon Age who watch this show would probably give it a lower rating than fans would, probably like 6-ish or so, maybe 7. And then I think for like a diehard fan, like I'm gonna give it an 8.5, 9 out of 10, because it really felt like Dragon Age, and I loved that. I think that keeping that feel of the games was really important. And I liked the animation. I am not a big anime kind of person. I do not like that kind of anime-ish, I don't even know if I'm using the right terms, but that kind of style of animation, which I was kind of nervous it would be, but I really liked it. I thought it was well done. I thought it was well written too. And the voice actors phenomenal too.
I'm gonna have to go with Miriam. I just really enjoy her character. If you've ever listened to this podcast, you now know that I have a type when it comes to favorite Dragon Age character, which is former enslaved elves from Tevinter.
You do have a type, I guess.
So I guess I have a type. I did like Absolution a lot. My rating out of 10 probably right now is 7.
Great. Well, let's move into our side character, who you may guessed it is going to be a character from Absolution, and I'm going to turn it over to Lewis to present our info.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about Miriam. I think it was a good choice for given the topic. So I'm going to jump right in. I sort of broke it down into chronological order, I guess, or as close to as I could put it in. So Miriam was born in Tevinter with her twin brother, Neb. As we learned in the show, she was owned by the matriarch of House Amasine, who raised her specifically to be the left hand of Rizarin, his personal assassin and spy. So throughout childhood, Rizarin, Neb, and Miriam all played together, with Rizarin coming to think of them as siblings. Rizarin's mother beat and mistreated Miriam frequently to remind her that she was not his equal. She was his slave, which I think definitely drives the fact to Miriam that you're not his equal. You're his slave. You're not his family. Whereas I don't know if we really saw it, but Rizarin may or may not have actually seen that. So he may not have it may have not disassociated that with him, I guess. So she eventually come to leave Tevinter after Rizarin's harrowing. He failed it, obviously. He failed to defeat the demon and began to become possessed. His mother, in panic, transferred the demon or spirit into Neb and sacrificed him. Horrified by this, Miriam attacked and killed the matriarch of House Amasine. And though she had successfully transferred the demon into Neb, he began to attack them, and she was unfortunately forced to kill him. Rizarin told Miriam to flee. She left Tevinter and met Hera, and the two become close friends and later lovers. So we then get to sort of the Dragon Age Inquisition time. When the breach opened, Hera wanted to join the Inquisition, believing that they were going to be the saviors of Thedas. They were the only ones equipped to deal with the threat of the breach. Miriam didn't believe that. She believed that people like herself and Hera, to some extent, were not important enough to change the world, and decided, and they mutually decided to end their relationship and part ways. I think that did hurt Miriam quite deeply. She felt like she'd been given up on by someone else. So Hera left and joined the Inquisition, while Miriam then continued life as a mercenary and thief, where she met Roland. And Miriam and Roland eventually came to join the gang of thieves known as Dolph's Daggers, which is where we see the start of Absolution.
I thought it was really interesting, Hera's connection to the Inquisition, and it made me think about, was she actually sincere in her desire to join the Inquisition? How long has she been working with Meredith? Did she join the Inquisition as a way in, or was she doing it authentically and then kind of came into this connection with Meredith? It's unclear. We don't really know. But my opinion is that you don't have that kind of hatred for your country that just pops up out of nowhere.
I think my only question for Hera at this point is why didn't you leave the Inquisition when you realized that Dorian was a member of the Inner Circle?
I don't know how much the everyday person of the Inquisition would know. Like, do they know all of the members? Like, especially with Mother Giselle's whole thing. Like, I don't know. Are they kind of trying to keep it hush hush?
I'd really like to know more about Hera's like timeline and where all these little pieces fit in.
Mm-hmm.
Be really cool. So obviously, Dragon Age Absolution starts with the Dolph's Dagger quest. Mission where they're trying to steal some lyrium from a circle of magi in Navarra. Roland and Miriam veer from the plan and sacrifice or use several of the members as bait to sneak in disguised as mages, allowing them to successfully recover the lyrium. Upon returning, Dolph is quite furious that they didn't follow the plan, which resulted in guild members being arrested, including his nephew. I'm sure he's got lots of explaining to do there. He accuses Miriam of trying to take over leadership of the gang, and Miriam attempts to de-escalate the situation, but they're interrupted by Fairbanks and Hera, revealing they were the ones who hired the daggers. Through a twist of fate, revealing that they'd reported them to the authorities, a fight breaks out, and that Fairbanks had revealed that he had betrayed the daggers. Miriam quickly and easily subdues the men and escapes with Roland, Fairbanks, and Hera. And they are then able to discuss Hera and Miriam able to discuss some of the bitterness that they still have between each other over the abandonment of the relationship and her leaving to join the Inquisition. So that sort of ties in with what I thought about earlier, where I think Miriam really was hurt by Hera leaving, even if she didn't betray it at the time. So Hera promises Miriam that if she helps them with this last job, that they can that she will leave the Inquisition and that they can retire together to the hinterlands and make cheese. It's a sweet sentiment.
It is a sweet sentiment, and I'm sad that they didn't get to do that. But I'm also the line is funny to me because there are so many cheese wheels in the hinterlands in Inquisition, and I know it's because the developers just put it in because they thought it was funny, and I know that because they've talked about it on Twitter before. So the fact that they put it in the show too just makes me laugh.
I liked the cheese reference as well. I also it felt insincere at the time too, like or not at the time. Thinking back on it, it feels insincere because obviously Hera has this urge to overthrow and destroy Tevinter. Like she's definitely very good at lying. I feel, and yeah, it was sad to see her play with the emotions of someone that she said she cared about so much. So Miriam agrees to take on the job, obviously wanting to have that life with Hera. She is then introduced to the rest of the team, and they reveal that they are breaking into the city of Nessum to steal the Circulum Infinitus and deliver it to Olay. This sort of sets Miriam off, given that it was where she was previously owned as a slave, and she had obviously vowed never to return there, and is ready to break the agreement that she'd just made moments before, or what we assume is moments before, and she's ready to leave. Hera obviously follows her attempts to change that her mindset, and Miriam is initially quite adamant that she doesn't want to return. She's never going to go back there. Hera again uses that influence and that thought that they can have that life together to sway her into agreeing to the job. And Hera further sort of tries to sway her by presenting it as a way to hurt the people that abused her, and find that closure on her past. And reaffirms their desire to retire after the completion of the job. So Miriam agrees to an extent that she'll only be responsible for finding them a way into the palace. She is quite adamant she doesn't want to actually be part of the mission and going in and seeing anybody. So They make their way to Nessum. They break in, or they enter. They scout out the palace. They case it out and come up with a plan utilizing some of the old escape tunnels that can only be opened from inside. Unfortunately, this means Miriam has to infiltrate the palace, which was not originally part of the deal. And as part of that, we get to see that uncover her slave markings, or Rosarin's name on her face, and her returning to the palace, which kind of, I guess, weirded me out a little bit. I don't know how no one picked up on who she was at that time. So after getting into the palace, the team split up, and Miriam remains guarding the tunnel exit, as it's their only way out of the palace, while cleaning up after the initial entrance into the palace. In the heist, Miriam encounters a young elven slave hiding from her superior. And rather than jeopardize the mission and draw unwanted attention, she turns the girl over and mutters an apology, claiming that nobody ever saves people like them, which just is that was such a sad line. It really felt that one. Seeing the young girl dragged off by the chef, the incident definitely triggers Miriam. She recalls her traumatic childhood, and she sort of blacks out, and just starts running through the palace, abandoning her post. And she unexpectedly encounters Rosarin and what we assume is his lover, Tassia. And as part of this, she draws her daggers and considers attacking Rosarin, thinking that she can end this here and now. Before she's able to, the security system in the palace triggers though, and she fears for Hira and the team, and returns to the secret tunnel entrance in order to rendezvous with everyone, and they can retreat. Instead, she finds what we assume is a mortally wounded Fairbanks at the entry point. He passes over the circulum to Miriam and dies in her arms. Roland and Lachlan enter to find Miriam with the dead Fairbanks. Roland, believing that there is a rational explanation. Obviously, he knows Miriam better than what Lachlan does. However, Lachlan believes that Miriam is attempting to steal the circulum, accuses her of murdering Fairbanks, and it starts to escalate there. Roland is able to eventually talk him down a little bit, and bring some composure to the group, and convince him to give her the benefit of the doubt, and attempt to rescue the rest of their team before they continue with that discussion. So Miriam hands over the circulum as a show of good faith. They attempt to go rescue Hira and find her trapped in the palace vaults, unable to break free because of the security system that's in place. This forces Miriam to leave her and flee, which I think, again, triggers or is part of those, brings up more memories about the fact that this is not the first time that they've had to part ways. This time it's a little more forced, I guess, because she's currently trapped. So the team and group are fighting through the possessed corpses, the demons trying to escape, where they run into Rosarin, and a bit of a fight breaks out here. And this is where Miriam discovers that Rosarin's personal bodyguard is in fact the possessed corpse of her brother. Rosarin, what the hell, bro? Attempting to explain that his intention is to resurrect Neb using the circulum, Miriam's pretty unwilling to listen. Obviously, she's had time to process the fact that Rosarin is not family, and she is quite a firm believer that he will never ever see them as that, and she will never see him as that. Attacks him and escapes, though she is severely injured in that escape. They eventually evade the Tevinter forces and make their way back to the safe house, where she is being treated by Quidian and the team. Rosarin, having some of her blood, is able to use blood magic and contact Miriam in her dreams, and prevent her from being healed by Gwydion. He again attempts to sort of plead his case that he needs Miriam's blood or blood of a close relative to resurrect Neb, which is why he needs her so badly. Miriam again rejects, which angers Rosarin, who instead offers to free the still alive Hira in exchange for the circulum. So he's using Hira as a bargaining chip. Miriam, determined to save Hira, convinces the rest of the group to join her in raiding the palace and freeing Hira, and they can all escape together with the circulum. So determined to save Hira, Miriam and the rest of the group arrive at the palace and slaughter many of the Templars and forces there. Miriam is eventually forced to battle with Neb, and eventually is able to decapitate him and free the spirit from his body. So Miriam, now believing that she's been able to put her brother to rest, they return to the safe house and discover that it's been ransacked. Hira is in possession of the circulum, which had been hidden in Miriam's room. Miriam then realizes that Fairbanks was betrayed by Hira, and that Hira is actually the traitor and has made a deal to trade Miriam. Amidst the revelation, Neb and Rosarin arrive on the Dragonback, and a fight ensues, during which Rosarin is able to gain control of the circulum. And together, the ritual to resurrect Neb is commenced. Rosarin actually nearly kills the dragon, consuming a lot of its blood into the circulum. Miriam is given a few moments of closure with her brother, and I think this is where, to me, absolution comes in. Miriam is able to have this moment with Neb, and the two of them are able to absolve each other of any guilt. Eventually, Neb, the spirit of Neb, is able to destroy his own body to prevent himself from being resurrected. The ritual is disrupted, and this gives Miriam the opportunity to strike Rosarin dead, ending that saga of her life. The show, or Miriam, where we end, is Miriam and the group in pursuit of Hira, who has managed to obtain the circulum in the chaos and run off. So that's the end of where we know with what's happening with Miriam.
Something that has really been sticking out to me just listening to you is the kind of juxtaposition of Miriam's "nobody ever saves people like us" with Gwydion's saving all the slaves in the palace, with Fairbanks' backstory and saving the regular people of the Emerald Graves, with the Inquisition even focusing on, okay, we've got to save the everyday people of Thedas, not just the big guys. So I think that statement is one that gets disproved throughout the show. And so I think Absolutely. That they do a really excellent job of using that statement and then going on to say, actually, no, here are all the ways that that's wrong throughout the show.
But I understand where she's coming from as well, and that she doesn't necessarily see that, but she hasn't put herself in a position to see that either.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, she's been isolated, really, truthfully, ever since she ran away. And so it makes sense that she wouldn't see that. She's been working with a mercenary company. Mercenary companies don't care who you are. They're not going to save you. That's true.
I think also it sums up because there's that final scene with Miriam and the young elven slave. In like earlier episodes, she says, no one ever saves people like us. And she follows up with that quote and she says, like, so we have to save us. And I think that that's coming to a realization that just because no one else doesn't look out for people like her doesn't mean that she can't look out for people like her.
When I initially heard that quote, I actually thought she was more talking about saving. No one's going to save people like us, so we have to save ourselves. Like, I have to look out for me because no one else will.
I definitely see that too. I think you can probably interpret it both ways, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for bringing Miriam. She's, the main character. She's very important to the lore. I hope we see her again soon. I just also, like Austin, really loved her. So I'm glad we got to talk about her so much today. So does anybody have any final thoughts about Absolution before we wrap this thing up?
I don't, other than it's a great show. You should go watch it if you haven't watched it.
100%.
Yeah, and hopefully we get a season 2.
Hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
Well, again, Lewis, thank you so much for coming on the show with us. Normally at the end of Patron episodes, we give our patrons a place to like plug their socials and all that. So if you want to plug anything, go ahead.
No worries. You can find me on Instagram at Lewis Hackfath. That's LEWISHACKFATH.
Awesome. Thank you.
Also,
thank you for having me.
I forgot to do this. We do this with all our guests. But what got you into Dragon Age and what keeps you coming back?
Oh my God. I got into it notoriously late. Like I started with Inquisition. I saw the game and bought it, and it sat on a shelf unplayed for so long. And then eventually I just had some free time and I started playing it. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I played right through and finished Inquisition. I had all of the DLCs as well, but didn't actually play them until later. I went back and played Origins and then DA2 before I played the DLCs for Inquisition. What keeps me coming back is definitely the stories, the characters, just how well put together the lore and the world is. Like that is something that I absolutely love in a game.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
Other than that, thank you for being here, and thank you all for listening to the Dragon Age Lorecast. We will see you next week. Thanks for listening to the Dragon Age Lorecast. You can find us on Twitter at DA Lorecast.
If you have any lore questions, topics to unpack, or side character suggestions, join our Cups Podcasting and More Discord server. It's easily the best place on the internet. You can also support us financially through our Patreon. You can find us there on patreon.com/DragonAgeLorecast.
The Dragon Age Lorecast is part of the Robots Radio Network. For more information about the Robots Radio Network, join the Discord server via the link in our episode description.
If you enjoyed the show or learned something new today, please subscribe, leave us a review, and join the Patreon. And if you enjoyed our intro and outro music, give a big thank you to Pipeman Studios. Thank you, Pipeman. Thanks again for listening to the Dragon Age Lorecast. We'll see you next time.
I'm your host, Maverick Stone.
It's me, Gingerino42.
I'm Romer.
Hey, this is Sassy Lady.
And I'm Jaxus. And we are the Fallout Roundtable. Join us as we explore various topics from the Fallout universe brought from multiple perspectives. We can be found on your favorite podcatchers from Spotify to iTunes. Or follow us on Twitter at FalloutRTB or our email falloutrtb@gmail.com. Be sure to rate, follow, and subscribe. Thank you.